Hi, I'm Louise Kurzmark.
And I'm Jan Melnick, and we're here to share our on-target resume roadmap for early careerists. In working with early careerists, often the very first step is reviewing their existing resume, perhaps one they used when they graduated from college or one that they've updated themselves. We've noticed a few recurring issues with these resumes. The positioning, structure, and content are not a good match for their current goals, whether that's career advancement, pivoting to a new career, or perhaps pursuing advanced education. The resume contains too many undergraduate details that are no longer relevant and support their new quest. And it becomes distracting because it's a new grad resume and not a rising professional resume. Like resumes we see from many potential clients, whether early careers or senior executive, the resume focuses too much on job duties and activities at the expense of accomplishments. When we conceived this series of on-target resume roadmaps, we wanted to provide solutions that work for these kinds of issues and other related scenarios that you may face. We understand the challenge and the best strategies to address them, and we are armed with very versatile tools that work for many different clients.
So let's look at the specific challenges for early careers. We've divided them into 4 different buckets. The first is taking that new grad resume and transforming it into a professional document that is going to represent them at this stage of their career. Bucket number 2 is to position them for a career pivot. Sometimes people start out in their career, they graduate, they get a job in their field, and after a few years, they figure out, this really isn't for me, or I need to make a change. How do we then make their resume, sell them for that in a way that is not disruptive or confusing to the reader? Third would be to help them prepare for admission to grad school if they're looking for an internship or a grad student. So we need to figure out how to present all of their college activities and any professional activities they have in a way that shows they're ready for the next step in their careers. And then finally, as Jan mentioned, a lot of people who submit their own resumes to us for review, and people of all ages and stages do not mind their experience or accomplishments. They're loaded up with activities, and we have to figure out how to uncover the accomplishments and present them so that their unique value is really coming across in the resume. So a couple of housekeeping notes, and then we're going to plunge in. First of all the samples, including before and after, are shared in the book, the ones that we're using in the webinar, and of course, a few more. So you can look at them at your leisure when you're looking at the ebook. And then this webinar is available to you. You can revisit it as often as you wish.
So we're going to begin with a new graduate resume, Sheila Jeremiah. So we're going to transform her former new grad resume into a professional document. And we're going to talk about the early careerist classic clients who used a resume that they may have very successfully employed back when graduating from college and securing their first real role. And they are probably now seeking a new position, maybe with the same company that hired them right out of college, or perhaps with a different organization. In many cases, these student resumes include coursework, extracurricular activities, athletics, fraternity, sorority associations, projects within their majors, part-time and often very unrelated job experiences. Of course, the majority of that experience can be deleted altogether. So we're going to look first at Sheila's before resume. I split it across 2 screens. You don't need to read it all here, but you can see that she selected Times New Roman. She uses professional profile instead of target keywords. She had removed the irrelevant college activities, so I didn't have to worry about that. She added her MBA to her education, which is important to show, but she didn't showcase the promotion that she had landed in her role at Winchester Health Center at all on this, wanted my help in bringing that in, and recognized that she needed a wholesale update, even though she had taken out a lot of the college experience. Through discussion, I learned that she wanted to be very selective in identifying a new role that would take advantage of that MBA and the elevated experience from her 2 years in her first role with Winchester Health. So let me show you the education section first. Very simply, just plopping in both her degrees. Both were earned at University of Richmond, but I stated them twice to give prominence to the fact that she has the 2 degrees. And she did not have distinction with her MBA when she graduated. So I dropped the fact that she had had a fairly high GPA with her undergrad degree so as not to cast prominence on not having it with the MBA. Let's take a look at the experience in the after version. So she had been in this role for 2 years. Actually, the beginning line starts at the bottom of page 1, but these were the important elements that I wanted to showcase. Rather than a long list of bulleted points, I tried to break them into the categories that seemed logical to showcase her talents, to show where she had contributed to the organization. I used the effective strategy, I believe, of bolding the first few words, particularly the verbs, of course, and really trying to draw a clear link between what she had done and what the results were in the form of those 3 select accomplishments chosen, with a little bit of numbers where I had them available. And that was extracted through our consultation process. For the next slide, I'm going to showcase her current role that is revealed as a promotion from May 23 to present. It details each of the things that she's been doing as an Epic Uptime Anesthesia Application Analyst 2. A lot of words, but those are the words that are in the target roles she is seeking with perhaps another organization. Her certification is included, her project management background is presented, and again, select accomplishments are showcased because these are her notable achievements. Then, in positioning for her profile, we use literally those words because that's what target employers are going to be seeking. And then I created the sub-language of her keywords that showcase project management, IT, healthcare, tech, infosystems management, supporting that. Gave her a pretty strong value proposition. And throughout, what I've tried to do is embed both the soft skills as well as the value prop and the hard skills, so that it creates a slightly longer than typical profile, but we wanted to ensure everything was in there without going into too much detail with respect to her technology capabilities or her complex project management skills. And this does seem to showcase her quite nicely. I think that she will be effective as she strategically looks. She loves the organization. She just wants to make more money and be tracked for further advancement. And so she was delighted with coming out of a college resume and now really up-leveling to a true professional resume post-graduation.
Okay, so now we move on to challenge number 2, positioning for a career pivot. So sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, young professionals might want to make a shift even after only a few years in their job that they pursued right out of college. So now they should not have to start from the bottom again, but if they don't have the skill to position their experience as relevant to the next step up, even if it's in a slightly different field, they're probably not going to be considered a strong candidate for that higher level position. So our job is to make sure that what they've done is presented with relevance and is not overlooked just because it's a slightly different field. So this is my client, Daniel Mendez. He had an unusual background. He's a musician. He was a music industry major in college, and he actually had not finished his degree because he left school a semester short because he was signed to a record label and had the chance to go tour internationally. I mean, that's pretty impressive, and I think a pretty good reason for dropping out of college a little bit early. So after a few years, he was making his own music, performing with a really well-known band, doing some session studio tours in Nashville. He remained in Nashville and decided to get off the road. He said, I've had enough of this. I need to get a more stable career. So he started in sales and ended up in real estate, first renting apartments and then selling them, and had a pretty successful career at it. And he liked it. The issue was his schedule was very uncertain. If you've ever worked in real estate or had family members who do, you know that evenings, weekends, they can be on call when a house is or a property of any kind is on the market. They want to show it and get that commission. So it was difficult for him to schedule his music gigs, which he loved doing, and still did part-time. And also he had recently married and was thinking of starting a family with his wife. So they wanted a little bit more job security in the term of benefits, and also a more regular work schedule. So he decided he would look around. So now his challenge is, how do I make my real estate sales career look relevant to other industries? He thought he could stay in sales. He likes it. He's good at it, but he didn't want to be pigeonholed into that one area that he definitely wants to leave. And he was not willing to target any specific industry. So we didn't have that goal to work with. So I wasn't able to use language, for example, that would make him fit more strongly into a technology industry or manufacturing or something. We just didn't have that target. But sales was a pretty good start, and I was willing to start with that and see if we could position him for those kinds of roles. So, of course, in sales, success is all about the numbers. So in my consultation, I really worked with him to uncover specifics and success stories and examples of how he had been successful in sales. As we've mentioned several times, most people do not do the deep work required to uncover all of that, and their resumes end up sounding kind of formulaic, bland, and not impressive. So I wanted to make sure that Daniels did not fall into those traps. So let's take a look at what we did with this experience. This is the first position listed on his resume. It's labeled sales experience. And I tried as much as possible to use language that was generic rather than real estate specific, because I didn't want him, once again, to be pigeonholed. I like to use, when I can, the technique of leading off each position with a really strong statement, often in bold. In this case, closed millions in real estate sales. And another technique that I really like is to break up long lists of bullet points with keyword headings. This is a great way to get keywords into the resume, and it also makes it much easier for people to skim through and find the things that are most interesting to them. And it avoids having that really long laundry list of bullet points, because we don't want to eliminate good content, but we do want to make it easy for people to read it. So, and the second position shown on his resume down toward the bottom of page 1, I grouped all of his sales associate roles with 3 different agencies into one heading. That gave it a lot more continuity. The roles were essentially the same. And he had been recruited, as we announced in the first statement, repeatedly recruited to join the sales team at either larger, more prestigious, better paying organizations. And he took each opportunity that came along to him. I used the same technique of using keyword headings, sales, market analysis, networking, relationship building, to highlight those, to show that he had experience and success in all of these areas that are extremely critical in any sales job. So even though his role was maybe showing people rental apartments, if I had written extensively about that job, that would not have had the same impact as grouping them with his sales role and in highlighting the areas that he had definite experience. So his experience looked great. Yes, it's in real estate, but it's definitely in sales, and it's definitely successful. And to cap all of this great experience off, we created a summary that's pretty concise and highlights at the top in the headline areas of interest rather than job titles. He was not sure how his experience would translate to job titles in the real world or the other world other than real estate. He always could easily change this headline in seconds to a job title that he was actually applying for. So it was pretty simple formatting for him to do that. So solution selling, business development, customer relationship management. This is where he's heading. Then a very short 3-line paragraph that identifies him as an award-winning consultative sales professional, not a real estate sales professional. And then the 2 lines below that are highlighted with shading, the first one talks about great numbers, 20 million plus in closed sales, and then an award that he won, top sales pros in the Business Journal. And then finally, another line of specific areas of expertise that he has to offer, that maybe social media marketing, for example, maybe not every new salesperson will have, and its ability to manage the CRM and so forth. So he's got some stuff that will help him be successful in sales, even if it's in a different field. Now, the next question was, let me go back there so we don't read ahead. What do I do with Daniel's music experience? Now, he'd done this for several years coming out of college. Do I include it on the resume or don't? If I include it, how? In talking with him, we really discussed it, and he was confident that he had several marketing, business-related activities and achievements from those music years that he thought would be valuable. And the more we talked about it, the more that I came to believe it. And I also thought, I bet people who are looking for someone who is a little non-traditional, creative, innovative, outside the box thinker for sales is going to be very interested in this experience. And many people will probably want to talk with him about it, particularly because he had toured nationally or internationally with a very well-known band. So here's how we put it on page 2. Additional relevant experience. Give him his title, musician and touring musician, that he still performs, national and international experience, including the great band Dixieland. I didn't make that name up. With a nationwide tour, and then marketing and business management, right? So that's an important part, because as an independent musician, of course, he had to manage his own business, if you will. He had to build his fan base and communicate with them. He didn't have an army of people like really famous singers do and musicians to do all that for them. He had to do it himself. So that was a good part of it. That really speaks to his organizational abilities, especially if you think of someone in an artistic profession. You might think they are not organized and businesslike, but he definitely is, and we wanted to showcase that. So at the bottom of the page, or actually halfway down page 2 on the resume, it wasn't a full 2 pages. Here's his education. Now I included it in this way, mentioning completed 85% of requirements toward Bachelor of Science. I like to include the bachelor's degree language in there, even if it's not completed, if I can do so honestly. In this case, certainly could. And then I added a little note, signed with the record label, and accepted the rare opportunity to begin touring nationally and internationally. So why include that? I think it's a great story about why he left, rather than leaving that open to guesswork. Now, one thing I will say is, when Daniel and I talked about this resume, I did make him aware that some people are probably going to look at that music experience in less than a positive light, or it might be distracting. So I furnished him with a second version of the resume that was just 1 page. The music experience was taken off. And then at the bottom, I put this education with his school, and the first line about completing 85% of the requirements. I left off the dates, and I left off the signing with the record label, just to eliminate some of the confusion and make it more focused squarely on the sales area and not get distracted with the music. So it worked out great for Daniel. He ended up taking a position in sales with a 3D manufacturing technology company. Whatever that means, I'm not really sure. But he's doing it and loving having a predictable schedule that he can come home at night to his lovely wife. So that's the story of Daniel. I'm going to go on and talk to you about challenge number 3, positioning the job seeker for admission to grad school or other advanced educational opportunity. And our example here is Ashley McConnell. So I worked with her on her resume when she was applying to colleges. So 5 years later, she has graduated, and she is already halfway through a master's degree in cybersecurity. So she came to me to help with a resume for an internship between the 2 years of her master's program, a summer internship. So the resume that we had for her was not really relevant, because what I had written for her, she wasn't using any longer, and she had created this particular version, which, once again, as you can see, Times New Roman, list of bullet points. It did have a lot of good information in it in terms of her leadership activities that she had segmented very nicely, because her background is quite unusual. She had never studied IT or technology. She was not really that interested in it. She loved politics. She was a political science major. She was an excellent organizer and leader. She could get people to follow along with her ideas. But when she was, I think, a sophomore in college, she had been cyberstalked by someone. And the experience was, of course, very upsetting to her, and also opened her eyes to what can happen to people in these experiences. And she had some ideas for solutions on it, and that led her to consider the career in cybersecurity. And she learned, as she applied for graduate school, that she did not have to have a strong technology background to pursue the master's degree, because a lot of the fundamentals would be covered in her first year. So she decided to go for it, got into a good school, and then now she's looking for that internship. But very unusual background for anyone, if you've worked within most technology fields, that she just does not have an experience in that. So let's see how things turned out for her. Here's her after version, and this is the top. I gave her that top candidate cybersecurity intern at Meta. Easily, she could customize that for every opportunity that she applied for. She was aiming for the top. She was looking for the top technology companies in the country to get this internship at. We have a brief introduction of who she is, MS student in cyber intelligence, eager to learn, grow, and contribute. Her track record of solving problems, innovative solutions, building support for new ideas, and doing the work to move ideas to action. And that is exactly what her track record shows. And then I came up with a section called core attributes, because once again, I think that in this field and in people hiring interns, for example, are looking for people who are going to stand out, people who are really going to take great advantage of the learning opportunity that an internship offers to them. And if you have curiosity and you're an analytical thinker and take the initiative, you are going to do something with what you learn. And hopefully through influence and collaboration, convince others to do something with you. So we came up with that very, very short introduction, followed by her current MS cybersecurity anticipated in 2026. First semester coursework, and the reason that's included, as you might imagine, is to get at least a couple of technology terms into this resume that she is, she's at this point has completed those courses. And then in her college experience is really broken down, just highlighting two things, her degree, of course, and then an award that she got and the fact that she had studied abroad, because I think those are valuable without really overwhelming the resume with any length or depth. Okay, next came the big section on her resume under the same category, leadership. And I did use some of the things that she had in our consultation. I learned more about the different initiatives she had led, why she had taken the job. In many cases, she had been recruited for it. The main thing there is under the student director of the night safety program. That was something that she conceived and she came up with the position. It was an idea to keep students safe at night when they're going out, I guess, drinking. I'm not sure. I'm not been a student in a long time. And to keep students safe on their urban campus. So she created the position, she built awareness, discussion, and really expanded it to other universities. And built some legislation that was adopted by them, built support, and then her position became permanent, and she recruited and hired, if you will, her successor. So a really strong accomplishment for a 20-something-year-old. Her other roles were also important and impressive. She was invited, she came up with an idea. She's got a lot going for her, and we tried to do it in a way that's fairly easy to read and fairly concise so that we're not overwhelming readers with too much information at this stage of her career. And the final section in this leadership section of the resume is titled the article that she wrote after her experience, Cyber Stalking When It Happens to You. And there's a link to where you can read that article because it does describe the situation and also discusses in there some of the solutions and ideas that she has for eliminating this problem happening to others. It's very brief. It doesn't get into the emotional aspects of it, but it really is an achievement and a relevant and interesting discussion point for people looking for interns in cybersecurity. So we included it in this way. It's going to be helpful to her without going into the weeds too much. And then the final item on the resume was the additional experience that she had, which she had been an engineering intern for some reason and had done the job, but didn't really love it, didn't want to go back there, didn't have a lot to say about it, was not given a whole lot of opportunities to do more. So we included it. It's a great name to have on there. And then she had been a server for several years. So it shows that you're employable, you have a good work ethic. So it's really worthwhile to add. So she did get a cybersecurity internship, not at one of her top schools, but she got one. And now she's in the second year of her master's program, and she has been elected, no surprise, to a leadership position on the grad school senate. So she's continuing her leadership ways, and we'll have even more to talk about when she finishes the program. So the bottom line with all of these clients is we need to unearth as much material as we can, because what we're looking for are themes and threads that we can weave together into material that is cohesive and that tells the story that our clients want the readers to see. It's truthful, but it's selective. We're choosing the right stuff. And that really, I think, is our talent. we know what to look for, we know how to put it all together and make it sound cohesive without being in any way untruthful or misstating things, but particularly for people who are looking to make a big move, to make a change, to do something different. Our talents can really help them to create the image and the brand that they are going to need as they move forward in their careers. So we have one more story to tell, and Jan's going to share that.
This one is our challenge number 4, emphasizing achievements over activities and responsibilities. We want concrete results. We want to know the how behind every story to see what we can extract to position someone who is interested in moving on. So Pearl, which you'll meet very shortly, shared with me her resume, which you look at that and you say, well, it's not horrible, but she's not really doing anything prominent. She kept her education with her coursework and objective at the top. This was college resume to which she had added the one job she landed right out of school at City Furniture, and she had done very well. She enjoyed her work there. She was successful. And as a typical early careerist, she didn't really know what to do with those internships that she had held. She felt that some of them could be significant going forward. She knew that she wouldn't remain at City Furniture forever. She had a new position that she wanted to add, but really was at a loss as to how to catapult from new graduate extended resume into something far more targeted and professional looking. The second page of her before resume, you can see, has all those leadership activities at the bottom, skills. I had to explain to her nicely that we didn't need to call attention to those. It's anticipated that she would naturally know that, and really what to do with everything that she had done before she was even in college, that all had to be truncated completely out. She had a lot of personality. So she bubbled every time she talked about everything. And I wanted to try to convey that in her new resume, but she recognized we were going to do a significant overhaul. So I was able to take the rambling 2-page resume, and I'll share with you some of the strategies used for the after version. First, it was really extracting what it was that she had done in her role as a category associate, which was a promotion that she received. She mentioned that it was only 6 months into her role there with the company, which was highly unusual, and she was involved in one of their top 5 grossing categories. If you think of a firm like Wayfair, you can imagine the size of this particular organization and the value, $30 million in revenues. So we had numbers that we needed to extract, stories that needed to be conveyed so that it would tell a very compelling story, leadership, relatively young candidate, and the things that she had done that could bring value to her in her job search. I created the line, one of Florida's largest in-store. I like to do that if a company isn't necessarily known. And while people in the immediate area knew of City Furniture, she was thinking that she might like to get up to Boston or maybe out to San Francisco. So I wanted to make sure that this would have play in other geographic parts of the country. I took her buyer housewares role and truncated that, kept some of the name brands in, some of the things that she had done because she was creative. She brought in new accounts. So she was really doing a sales type of role, even as a buyer, and successfully identifying those products that would have great traction for the company. Let's go to the next. And this was her branding statement. These were all of the things she wanted to embed in the search. These were all the types of roles that she wanted to play. And as Louise had mentioned earlier, our clients certainly have the ability to switch up the keywords, alternate, substitute, depending on the opportunity that they're specifically targeting. What she had not done was really pulled in her own value statement. But going the extra mile, that was language I was able to pull from one of her performance evaluations that was mentioned in several different ways. I thought, well, that's really characterizing the type of role she's been playing. I also made sure that one of the significant accomplishments, a brand new product line, several of them that have been profitable for City, that she introduced even at a very young age, and then building in dollars, $2.5 million class of lighting. And so combining both soft skills and combining some of those hard skills, the transferable roles. Those are the things that would allow her to really position for success going forward. And she will be ready to launch. She now knows that she wants to layer this all into her LinkedIn so that it is fully up to date, and then she is off to the races. And I am very confident she will be highly successful going forward.
And I want to mention, Jan, that in case we haven't made it clear or we haven't looked at your ebook yet, in the ebook, there are literally dozens of questions of the kinds that we ask clients typically, and that may help to we may give you some new ideas on what to ask, how to ask it, to get the information, because that's where it all starts. If we don't uncover it, we can't then reveal it in the new documents. Okay, next we're going to talk about some tools, tips, and tricks that we like to use in this area. The category is artificial intelligence. So first of all, a key thing to keep in mind is that we need to provide ethical and responsible use of AI and transparency to our clients. And how you do that is up to you. We recommend having an opt-out perhaps in your client agreement so that they know you are using AI, particularly if you want to upload any client documents to AI for perhaps comparison to a job posting or to get some assistance with what you've written. And if it's going to reveal any of the client's information or their stories, then you want to make sure that you have their permission to do that. So let's talk about some ways that we use it. AI is an incredibly powerful tool, as I'm sure you all know, and it can really, I wouldn't say shorten, but maybe speed up and ease some of the work that we do so that we are getting great results with a little bit less of our own sweat going into the process. So first of all, my favorite use is as a thesaurus. I will enter in another word for whatever, managed, led, when I'm really stuck on something and maybe I've used the same word twice in a bullet point, or I need a new one to lead off a new bullet point and I just can't come up with it. And AI will give me several categories that I might find keywords under, and then 5 or 6 or 7 words under each category. So it gives me a lot of things, and usually I find the one I want, or it costs me to think of something else and I come up with it on my own. So if you haven't used it as a thesaurus, I highly recommend. And of course, it is super fast. Another great use would be if you want to upload a version of, let's say, a summary, your client summary, to LinkedIn without any of their identifying information, of course, and ask for alternative versions. And I find that the way that is most helpful for me is it usually comes up with a different way to present the material. It's not going to rewrite it necessarily. It's not, but it's going to enhance it or change it in a way that I wouldn't have thought of or hadn't thought of. And that can give me new ideas for ways to do things. And sometimes I'll adopt their ideas and sometimes I won't. But I like having that. It's like having a good friend sitting next to you and suggesting something. It can be very helpful. Finally, you may want to upload raw notes from your consultation with your client without, once again, identifying information, and ask for ideas for how to use that in the LinkedIn about section, for example, or in a cover letter, and get their ideas so that you have something to work with. Because I don't know if you're like me, but once I get started, you can't stop me. It's great. It's getting started. That's really the hard part. And that can give you that little bit of inspiration that is enough to get you off a dime and get you moving toward meeting that deadline. And finally, with regard to AI, a key thing to do, and once again, I'm sure you've probably already discovered this, is let it prompt you to do more and invite it to do more when it asks if you want it to, because those prompts you will go deeper and deeper into whatever you're asking. And each time you will reveal new information, new targeted information, and you will learn how best to ask for what you need if you follow the prompts and then pick up some clues for how you can better ask your questions. So use it responsibly, and use it to enhance what you do so well, which is to take your client stories and make them come alive on paper.
Perfect. And before we wrap up this afternoon, we would like to share just a few of our tools, tips, and tricks for writing for career changers. First of all, that very opening question: what is your objective? What is your intent? What is your target goal? What are you hoping to accomplish? Whatever it is that's going to elicit the key details that are going to shape the direction and focus the questions that you will be asking or embedding in your questionnaire, whatever your process. That's imperative so that you can do the best work for your client, pulling out that experience so that it aligns with their direction. And if it doesn't, that helps the client know, gee, maybe I'm not quite ready to make this pivot, but I could go pick up a certification. I could go do this training, or maybe hold off on that for later in my career. It will help inform their direction if they're not crystal clear. You want to be able to weave your storytelling into those connections as you push, prod, and pull out the details. And it can be very useful to remind clients, especially if they're not that far removed from their collegiate experiences, where they may have had some great successes, that not everything will be relevant to the new resume and the new focus. And one tip I try to share with clients is it's kind of fun to share all the versions of your resume and keep them throughout a career. I personally can go back and look to one that I prepared out of college, and it's pretty laughable now, the things that I thought were important to include. It worked at the time, but it is kind of nice to see from where we came in our career trajectory. And I've urged clients to make sure you've got access to a version. A lot of times when clients come to us for updates down the road, not our early careers, but those that can't put their hands on a resume, if they did have an older version, at least there's something to work with. So, additionally, as a practitioner fee discussion, we'd like to share just a few ideas there, because even if you weren't the original writer of that college resume, when that client approaches you, even if it's been only a couple of years or 5 years later, you may very well spend as much time doing a deconstruct to determine what's relevant, what's not. It isn't only lopping off their collegiate athletic experiences and coursework. It may be elements of leadership that could or may not support their quest, and knowing what to leave out is as important as knowing what to include. Likewise, with this fun challenge, you will be spending perhaps more time, and we just want to urge you not to underestimate that, to devoting it to strategy development, to storytelling, to not lowballing your fees, especially, again, if you had worked with the client first time around, or if mom and dad had paid for that resume out of college and now they're absorbing the expense. There might be a little bit of sticker shock as you explain what your approach is and what the value proposition is that you can deliver. In many cases, we found that those numbers could come as a surprise, and just be prepared to talk to them about the process. It's an investment in their professional career going forward. We have loved sharing our 12 client stories with the deep dives across 4 main early careerist categories. The ebook, coupled with this webinar, will ideally inspire you with new approaches or tweaks to the very good work you are already doing. And we are so glad that you joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you.